Yesterday, the government's expert advisory group published a report on the challenges this autumn and winter. They were asked to do so by the government's Office for Science. That report assessed the reasonable worst-case scenario for this autumn and winter, including a second COVID spike and seasonal flu, and it set out strong recommended actions to mitigate the risks. The report was clear. July and August must be a period of intense preparation, i.e. now. Can the Prime Minister make clear that he intends to implement the recommended actions in this report in full and at speed?
Prime Minister, Speaker, not only are we getting on with implementing the preparations for a potential new spike, but he will know that the government is engaged in record investments in the NHS, £34 billion. What I think the House may not realise is just in the last year since this government has been in office, there are now 12,000 more nurses in the NHS, 6,000 more doctors, and it was thanks to their hard work, thanks to the hard work of the entire NHS, that we were able to prevent our health service from being overwhelmed this spring, and we will take steps to ensure that it is not overwhelmed this winter as well.
In this report, commissioned by the Government's Office for Science, is that testing and tracing capacity will need to be significantly expanded to cope with increased demands over the winter. The reality is this: trace and track is not working as promised as it stands today. The report makes clear it needs to be significantly expanded to cope with the risks of autumn and winter. What assurance can the Prime Minister give that the system will be fit for both purposes in the timeframe envisaged in this report, i.e. by this September?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again he attacks the test and trace operation, which is working at absolutely unprecedented scale, and 144,000 people across the country, have now agreed to self-isolate to stop the spread of the virus. Our test and trace system is as good as or better than any other system anywhere in the world, and yes, it will play a vital part in ensuring that we do not have a second spike this winter.
This afternoon, Prime Minister, I'm meeting the families of the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice group, a group of hundreds of families who've lost loved ones. They say this, and I quote, "We won't let the deaths of our loved ones be in vain, and we won't allow the government to risk a second wave of deaths without learning from their mistakes." They will be listening to the Prime Minister's answers today. So what would the Prime Minister like to say to them?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I join with, I think, every member of the House in mourning the loss of everybody who has died in this epidemic. And I can assure him and through him the victims and their families that we will do absolutely everything in our power to prevent a second spike in this epidemic. And that's why we're taking the steps that we are. That's why we've set up, as I say, an unprecedented test and trace operation. That's why we are investing massively in our NHS, in our frontline staff, and as I say, in the last year, recruiting 12,000 more nurses as part of a programme to recruit 50,000 more, preparing our NHS for winter. We will do absolutely everything we can to protect our country and to stop a second spike. But what he has to decide is whether he wants to back that programme or not. Because one day he says it's safe to go back to school. The next day he's taking the line of the unions. One day they're supporting our economic programme. The next day they're saying our stamp duty cut is an unacceptable bung. One day they're saying they accept the result of the Brexit referendum. The next day, today, they're going to tell their troops to do the exact opposite. He needs to make up his mind which brief he's going to take today. Because at the moment, Mr. Speaker, looks he's got more briefs than Calvin Klein. We're getting on with delivering on our agenda for the country, getting this country through this pandemic and taking it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last few months, we've supported many of the economic measures announced by the government, but the decision last week not to provide sector-specific support to those most at risk could end up costing thousands of jobs. One of the sectors, aviation, has already seen huge redundancies. BA have announced 12,000 redundancies, Virgin 3,000, EasyJet 1,900. If the government's priority really is to protect jobs, Why did the Chancellor not bring forward sector-specific deals that could have done precisely that?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, no one should underestimate the scale of the challenge that this country faces, and that is why the Chancellor has brought forward a range of measures, which, by the way, he supported last week, Mr. Speaker, the job retention bonus, the Kickstarter programme for young people, and we are also doing a huge amount to support the aviation sector. And one of the companies that he mentions, Virgin, has now come out of the Birch process after extremely difficult, but in the end, productive conversations. That's the work of this government, getting on, helping companies through it, helping our people through it. British Airways and many other companies are in severe difficulties at the moment, and we cannot, I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, simply with a magic wand ensure that every single job that was being done before the crisis is retained after the crisis. What we can do, and what we are doing, is encouraging companies to keep their workers on with the job retention scheme, with the job retention bonus, and with a massive programme in investment in this country, a £600 billion investment programme in this country to build, and create jobs. And that is what we are doing, Mr. Speaker.